Hello and welcome to Red Shirt Cinema Club, a weekly podcast about falling in love with Star Trek. This week's movie is Star Trek, confusingly, the 11th Star Trek movie we've watched, but the first with JJ Abrams at the helm. Join us as we discuss old friends played by new people, Simon Pegg's accent, and why Leonard Nimoy can never be beaten. Is Rob a Star Trek fan yet? There's only one way to find out.
I couldn't believe it when the bartender told me who you are.
Why are you talking to me, man?
Your father was captain of a starship for 12 minutes. He saved 800 lives, including yours. I dare you to do better. Enlist in Starfleet.
You will experience fear.
Fear in the face of certain death.
Pull your chute! No!
We received a distress call.
I've been waiting for this day my whole life. This day of reckoning.
We've got no captain and no first officer to replace him.
Yeah, we do.
You are capable of deciding your own destiny. The question is, which path will you choose?
James T. Kirk was a great man, but that was another life.
They're locking torpedoes.
Emergency evasive! Fire everything!
Hello and welcome to Red Shirt Cinema Club. I'm Nathan Dighton, your captain, and joining me on this Kelvin timeline episode of the podcast, First Officer Robert Pearson.
Hello.
And Ensign David Jackson.
What is happening? I get this is a very clever joke, Nath.
It
but
is a clever
the
joke.
clever joke is for you and me to be swapped, not for me to be demoted to ensign.
I like
throw that
this.
in.
First officer, yeah.
No, this is nonsense. I'm taking over. I'm taking back the captaincy.
Security, take this man off the bridge.
You are listening to Red Shirt Cinema Club. Don't worry, everything's been restored to normality. I'm captain again. And yes, in our continuing mission to make Rob a Star Trek fan, we're currently pootling along at Warp 5, having finished...
It's more than a pootle.
It's a good... Yeah, it's a good speed.
Good jog.
We've gone, poo. You know, I was trying to do this, the ship. We're at warp speed.
Yeah, there's been a flash. All the stars are now streaks. We're travelling at Warp 5, having finished the original movies, the Next Generation movies,
Nemesis.
and about to start Star Trek. The Abrams system. We've now entered the Abrams system.
They call them the Kelvin timeline, don't they?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, because of the ship at the
Because of the ship at the start of the movie, the USS Kelvin. We watched Star Trek together last night, and we are about to have many, many thoughts about it. Rob's already told me that he's looking forward to this one, which can mean many things. I'm nervous to find out what it means. And so there will be loads of spoilers. If you haven't watched Star Trek yet, just know you're welcome to join us, but there are going to be tons of spoilers about everything, starting from right now, as we begin, as we always do, with Rob's synopsis of Star Trek.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad you just mentioned the USS Kelvin there, because I'd forgotten the name of that ship. And that is where this movie starts. Chris Hemsworth, I'd forgotten he was in this film.
Me too.
Is Captain Kirk.
Very young looking Chris Hemsworth.
George Kirk.
Yeah, a little rug pull there.
G-Man.
And it's going badly for them. They're being attacked by a horrible, massive Romulan ship for reasons we don't know at this point. And they've got no defense. Their ship is about to be destroyed, and so Captain George Kirk, played by Chris Hemsworth, orders the evacuation of everybody on board, including his wife, who is having a baby right now. The stakes are so high. It's such a 2009 movie. There's always something going on that's bad. Every scene there are some stakes, and so heroically he stays behind because the autopilot has failed. So he's like, I'm going to have to pilot this. I'm going to have to fight off all the little tiny ships that are going to come and attack all of the escape pods. And so he does that heroically, and he sets a crash course to ram basically into the evil Romulan ship. I've forgotten also that the original captain of this ship had gone onto the Romulan ship to negotiate. It didn't go well for him. So this is Kirk's first ever time as captain. He's captain, I think, for 12 minutes, it says. Nice. And in that time, he managed to save 800 lives, including the life of his wife and newborn son, who he has just enough time to agree to name James Kirk before he dies heroically. And that's the prologue. And then we cut to a few years later. We see a child Kirk being rebellious and driving a car really fast. And there's a futuristic policeman. He's like, what's your name? He's like, my name's James Tiberius Kirk, and I'm cool. And then we see young Spock as well, also struggling with some Vulcan bullies and how to handle them and how to compose himself and keep that Vulcan cool and not let his human emotions show through. We then cut to young adult Kirk and Spock. So we see Spock graduating and being offered a place in the Vulcan Academy, which he declines because he is not happy about how they refer to his human mother as being a disadvantage. He's not pleased with that at all.
No.
It's like, well, I'm going to join Starfleet then. Live long and prosper. And he says it in like a
not
screw
really
you kind of way, which I quite enjoyed. And then we cut to what Kirk is up to. And what Kirk is up to is chatting up women in a bar and having a fight.
Yeah.
But that is enough to impress Pike, who's heard about Kirk.
Captain Pike.
The young renegade who has all the good scores in all the tests, but has decided to just live a life of not caring and getting into fights. And he's not living up to his potential, which would be a disappointment to his father, who sacrificed himself to save James T. Kirk all those years ago.
Started talking like Kirk then. That was
funny. What's going on with your syntax?
And so Pike suggests to Kirk at the end of this bar fight, in which he tries to get Uhura's number. Uhura is not interested.
Yeah.
He tries to get her first name. She's not interested in giving him that either. And that's what starts the bar fight in the first place. But Pike suggests to Kirk, why don't you enlist? The ship for new potential recruits leaves at 0800 tomorrow morning. Be there. And he does go. And we introduced to Bones as well. And then shortly after that, we crash to 3 years in the future of that scene. And Bones and Kirk are good friends. Kirk cheats the Kobayashi Maru test, which I know what that is now.
Yeah.
I have actually seen this movie before, I should say, about 15 years ago when it first came out.
Okay.
The podcast crumbles to death.
Having known this is the only Star Trek movie I had seen before doing this podcast, I could not remember a single thing from this film apart from the fact that Kirk has a fight in the bar. That was all I could remember previously.
That's your standout scene.
And so, Kirk cheats the Kobayashi Maru whilst eating an apple, which is a nice little callback, I think, to William Shatner eating an apple. He's like, no, we won't fire back. And he somehow disables the programming of the Kobayashi Maru test, which disables the shields of the enemy ship, so he's able to win. And Spock, who's the person in charge of programming the Kobayashi Maru test, is not happy about this. And this is the first time Kirk and Spock meet. There's a little bit of animosity between them. And Kirk is not allowed to be signed up to the Enterprise as a result of this, being naughty. Bones, his good friend, however, smuggles him on board by making him ill on purpose. It's like, well, I've got to treat this patient and I'm on board, and as the medical officer, I say he can come on board, and so Kirk ends up going on board. Soon after this, we receive an emergency transmission from Vulcan, like a distress call. Something bad's happening on Vulcan, and it's described as like a lightning storm in space, and Kirk knows what that is because that's what happened during that fateful night his father was killed. And so he rushes to Captain Pike to warn him. It's like, this is a trap. You're racing into a trap. And everyone is astonished that, who is this guy? Why are you on the bridge making all these outlandish claims?
Good questions.
But Spock is like, actually, his logic is sound here. And he manages to convince Pike that actually it is going to be a trap. And they come out of warp speed directly into Nero's ship, the horrible Romulan ship from the start of the film. It's attacking Vulcan. It's got a big drill, which is drilling down to the core of the planet. And very quickly, they have to make a decision, and Pike decides, okay, I think they're hailed by Nero, and Pike decides, okay, I will go and answer this summons and negotiate. Meanwhile, you, Kirk, you, Sulu, who also has combat training apparently, and some other guy, you're going to go down and disable the drill. And
man in a red shirt.
They do it, and the guy in the red shirt is immediately killed because
Classic.
he opens his parachute too late and he gets burnt up by like the fiery jets underneath this drill. Sulu, who has fencing training, shows off his fencing training with some pretty elaborate swordplay, and Kirk does some punching, and they manage to defeat two Romulan guys who, I don't know what their job is, to just sit in the drill and make sure no one disables
Just make sure no one comes down, and they fail at their job, I think.
So they managed to disable the drill, but not in time. It's already done its job, and horrifically, there's some horrible like red matter weapon that is dropped into the center of Vulcan, and it basically creates a black hole in the center of the planet, which completely destroys the planet. It's completely sucked in. Spock has been desperately trying to evacuate the planet before this happens. He manages to evacuate some of the people, but tragically his mother dies right in front of his face. And a big argument ensues back on the Enterprise after this. Spock assumes command, and he, after his argument with Kirk, decides to say, Kirk, off the ship. And Kirk is marooned on an icy planet where he meets a bad bear-type monster, then a bad ant-type monster, and then he meets Spock from the future, played by Leonard Nimoy. Surprise! Leonard Nimoy's in this film. And Leonard Nimoy explains to Kirk that he and Nero are both from the future, and that in the future, Spock, unsuccessfully tried to save the Romulan homeworld from a star that had gone supernova. The plan was to essentially create the black hole and stop that star from destroying all the planets around it. He wasn't able to do so. It destroyed the Romulan planet, and Nero has blamed Spock for that ever since. And in the ensuing black hole that was created, both Nero and Spock got sucked through it into this past, now alternate timeline where things aren't happening as they had previously happened. And so Spock explains to Kirk, look, you need to be the captain of the Enterprise. I'm not supposed to be the captain of the Enterprise. You need to go back there and convince the younger version of me that he's not fit to be the captain because he's emotionally compromised. Trust me, I am emotionally compromised. I've just watched my homeworld be destroyed. And for some reason, Scotty's there, played by Simon Pegg. But future Spock has the equations necessary to warp both Kirk and Scotty aboard the Enterprise, despite the fact that it's traveling at warp speed. So they do that, and there's a scene for some reason where Scotty's getting sucked through some tubes. But then Kirk immediately and very quickly manages to get some emotion out of Spock by just being all up in his face and being like, your planet's just died, your mum's just died. Aren't you sad about that? And he is sad about it. And they have a fight, and Spock has to resign the captaincy of the ship. But because Pike had made Kirk first officer, that means that Kirk is now the captain. And so they basically have to save Earth from Nero, who basically is just out for revenge now. He's traveling to Earth. He's put the big drill down. Kirk and Spock have got to go and stop him, and they are beamed on board the horrible Romulan ship, and they have a plan that Spock doesn't think is going to work, but Kirk's like, it will work, Spock, let's just do the plan. And the plan does work, and they manage to create a black hole that the Romulan ship goes through, and there's a bit where Kirk's like, shows some compassion. It's like, we could save you, but Nero's like, I would rather die in agony than be saved by you. And Kirk's like, you got it. And he fires everything at the Romulan ship, and it's destroyed. And they manage to get away. the end.
It was the end.
Wow. Well, thanks for that, Rob. Lots of for some reason, which is always a good sign when you're doing a synopsis. I think this is quite astute observation about why things are in the plot. Did you like this movie?
15 years ago, I liked this movie. I thought it was a fun action movie. Yesterday, I found it intensely annoying.
Really? Wow, interesting.
Tonally, I found it unbearable at times. Like, it felt just it's such an Abrams film, such a film. There's just something going on in every scene. It just couldn't sit still. It was an agitated, fidgety, restless movie. Just slow down for a little bit. Not every single shot has to have some bloody lens flare in it. Not every shot has to be someone doing something. It's like you can just feel them. Like what are you doing in this scene? Are you eating anything? No, we'll eat something. Are you saying something funny? Are you saying something witty? Are you going somewhere? Are you running somewhere? Like, do something.
This is like
Chekhov was cool in this film.
He was cool.
Chekhov's the MVP, the young 17-year-old Chekhov. They wouldn't have been able to get through it without him.
He was quite different to the original series one as well, which I think probably helped them. I think it's funny, isn't it, that you can... I think it's a good film. I think it's a well put together film, but I just have no patience or tolerance for this type of filmmaking. I don't think anymore. I think I've seen it so many times, and you get closer. The closer we get to what feels contemporary, something.
Yes.
Although a film I watched. It feels recent, even though it's 15 years ago. You put it down, you pick it up again, and you're like, it's like...
I think, ironically, I don't think it's aged well. There's stuff in this that had not aged well. And I mean tonally in terms of like Kirk's lecherous, womanizing behavior. I found it intolerable. His constant pursuit of Uhura. Like the bit in the bar fight where he accidentally... puts his hands on her breasts.
That was
just.
I don't think that would fly in 2024. And we're talking about only 15 years ago.
Yeah,
it just felt
like maybe, but it's more that he looked kind of like cheeky about it. He was like, "That was an accident, but I enjoyed it," and it was like, "No."
He's trying to be Han Solo. He's trying to be a rogue.
But I think this is the thing about deliberately engineering a reboot in an era where we're more self-conscious anyway. We certainly were then, but there's a generation of filmmakers who are very aware of the art of storytelling. I think that's why something is happening in every scene, like the way that stories are. These blockbuster stories specifically are kind of crafted, and everything has to have a reason. Breaking the story,
you could see it though. You could see. Here's the what's it called? The thing, the catalyst that makes
MacGuffin.
That makes a character decide. That makes a character go from "I'm not doing anything about this" to "I have to do something about this."
Oh, the inciting
instinct.
Yeah, for sure.
It happens for Kirk. It happens for Spock.
Don't mention my mother.
Oh, well, I want to really get to the bottom of this. I just want to understand completely if it's is its relationship to Star Trek anything part of your dislike of it? Because when you saw it in 2009, you hadn't seen any of the Star Trek.
Correct.
So you could just enjoy it as an action film. Now you've seen the rest of it.
Yeah.
It is very different. And is that part of the reason that you haven't gelled with it?
It's part of my annoyance of it. I thought Chris Pine was absolutely abysmal and intolerable in this film. I couldn't stand him. Awful, smug. He wasn't Kirk.
Right.
It was like a stupid, whiny caricature of him.
But was it a young Kirk?
This is like reading Reddit. This is amazing.
Was it like young Kirk, though? Because
I don't know what young Kirk's like.
Also, no, I know you don't. But also, you can accept that, you know what it's like to age, and people are different when they're younger. Also, I did think it was more apparent to me this time. Maybe I just thought about it more, that the very first scene is timeline's completely changing, and it's basically saying everything you're about to see has no relationship to any Star Trek you've ever watched before.
Do we know? I didn't realize at that point that it was an alternate timeline. I don't know what the history of Kirk's dad is.
No.
I thought maybe are we seeing the origin story of James T. Kirk here? This is how he was born. This is how his father died.
The first time I saw the film, I didn't really realize that.
But then, and same. But then on this watch, then Spock, old Spock, Nimoy makes it very clear.
It wasn't until that old Spock narrative dump scene that I realised, okay, this is what's happening.
Yes, so
which I found quite an exciting idea the first time I watched it.
Yeah.
Now I've lived through the Abrams Star Wars, and I feel slightly more cynically as though he has a way of deliberately engineering space to both reboot but with a bit of plausible deniability,
Yeah.
which I don't enjoy.
No.
What did you think of the film?
I actually enjoyed it. I enjoyed it zipping along. I mean, I've been wondering myself, like, I think I enjoyed the spectacle of it. I did enjoy the relationship to Star Trek, but I don't really think of it as a Star Trek movie. It feels like a completely different kettle of fish to what we've previously seen.
Funny, isn't it? Because I think the new TV shows are more Star Trek.
Yeah.
And these live in this sort of little space where there was nothing on TV. And they do feel weirdly like they could be their own. Well, they are their own thing. The Kelvin timeline is its own thing.
It is. And yeah, it's strange. The characters are there, and I do think that some of the character adaptations are really good, actually. I think some of the performances are really good. The casting's really good. Not all of it.
Some of them they're either really good or they're terrible.
Yeah.
And I've got 3 specific people I thought were abysmal in this film.
We'll come to that.
I want to guess them.
Yeah. But I don't think it really bears any other relationship to Star Trek, apart from the names and places.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel
It's very
in
clever,
any way.
isn't it? That's part of, like...
It is clever.
And having done this process and being more familiar with it, I think diehard Trek fans would have known that Kirk grew up with his father, probably. So that probably was a giveaway. I didn't understand that. But just thinking about it, obviously, like the eels going into Pike, that's a reference that I'm now familiar with. Even having Scotty in a scene where he is shown something he invents in the future, that's like a callback to the Hello Computer scene. Even Sulu fencing, there's like a really famous scene where he goes mad and he fences in the original series, and you can see him with his top off and he looks crazy.
Yeah.
I almost forgot that, and so there's a cleverness which I don't know if it really it doesn't do a job of making it feel like Star Trek. It makes it seem like someone has scientifically dismantled Star Trek and put it back together again.
Well, the thing is, it also, it just doesn't follow through. I was thinking, like, first of all, it's kind of interesting. I'm sure this is unintentional and not a consideration at all, but in a way, it continues to promote the idea from Star Trek Nemesis that you are you. You are not the events that happen to you.
Yeah.
Because, and this is, I think, a bit annoying, ultimately, everybody becomes the same. And I can accept, some other characters aren't touched as much by the Kelvin disaster as Kirk is.
Yeah.
But he's basically exactly the same guy, and we have no, knowledge of what he was like as a young man without that on the original timeline.
For sure.
So it's just like, it would be kind of interesting if they had pursued the idea that Spock is the captain, for example, and he's the first officer. I don't know.
It would have been a stronger
It would have been
what if
something.
story. I think Rob's right that's where very much for some reason, and the reason is because we're going to tell this story about Star Trek, which is ultimately going to be bent round in a certain way.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the film,
Right.
with caveats that I didn't have previously, which come partly from the age and partly because we've just been watching all of Star Trek and I really like Star Trek. And I guess I see it very much in that as we've been kind of going through the years that have come before, and I've just had a look at the years that come after this, it's just incredibly different to all of the rest of Star Trek that's ever visually and in its sense of scale. And this is the time where specific, like Batman Begins and Casino Royale are the two which I've picked out kind of.
Yeah.
And I think studios are aware that they have these properties which are worth money, and they drift, and they are obviously, like, if you want them to last for decades, you have to update them at certain points. And these are really big kind of step change updates where you reinvent a tone and you make, the big thing about, I think we're all quite big fans of Batman Begins. It'd be interesting if we rewatched it, see if we still would be. But I remember watching it and going, wow, they've really made this a mixture of believable, like the whole talk about myth in there is all to sell to a new audience. Like, you can actually kind of believe in this character.
Yeah.
And I remember watching Casino Royale, and you think about even the Brosnan Bond movies, and there's like a smarminess and a cheesiness, especially by the end. They were terrible. And instead now he's like running around doing parkour and like smashing a man's face into a urinal.
But imperfectly. I was just saying about Casino Royale. I remember, like, he's not perfect, which I think they tried to make it real again.
And I think that I can see a similar aim here, which it kind of, I think, is quite successful at. And then the datedness of it kind of comes in a little bit. It says, like, that first scene, like, it's overwhelming, and it's overwhelmingly kind of cinematic. And I think the one difference is you're kind of looking at the Star Trek special effects all through the years, and its models, they're a bit rubbish. Then it's that period in the 80s where I remember this from being a kid. Sometimes movies would just, it's like graphics in a game. Is it going to have good graphics or bad graphics?
Yeah.
And it's similar with special effects. Sometimes they can just go wrong. We're way past that. Special effects don't really go wrong in this era anymore. And what they decide to do is just they have that kind of deliberately, again, made realistic, made imperfect, which I remember kind of being a thing in Firefly and then Battlestar Galactica. That's kind of a trend through the noughties of, like, even though it's an effects shot, it'll be unstable or handheld looking in space. Or like that shot where they were skydiving to the drill and it kind of, the zoom finds
the one
them.
that really stands out to me always is in The Return of the King, when Gandalf rides out to make the Nazgul go away from Faramir and his crew. They're returning to Gondor and he rides out on the white horse. There's that incredible handheld shot that comes behind them.
Yeah.
And Gondor just is in it. So it's like a CG Gondor with a handheld, composed on top of a handheld shot of Gandalf and the riders coming back, that just epitomizes that kind of.
The things I'm thinking of, I guess, is specifically like in space, and also I felt like the combat at the beginning was, and it made me laugh thinking about normal Star Trek. It's like fire lasers and it's meep, meep, and this was like bah, 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 bah. It's like just guns going off everywhere. It was insane, and in a way, it made me think of. Sorry to talk for ages. It made me think of Abrams and Rise of. Maybe I'm skipping to the end here, but like the final Star Wars, Rise of Skywalker, and it's like, we had a Death Star, now every star. It's like just to a million, and it is that. It's like, you want a fleet of ships? Look at, and it's like the whole screen is just. It's like you copied and pasted. It's like overwhelming and too much. But I did enjoy some of the energy of it. The lens flare stuff was ridiculous. Or not even always lens flare, but just the it looks like when you download an effects package for Premiere and you're like, I'm going to make every dissolve something incredible.
This was like, the height of the Michael Bay Transformers era as well, wasn't it? Where just everything looked like this.
Like sunny kind of. I don't know.
I know exactly that kind of shot you mean, by the way. The digital zoom, I hate it. The sort of like, you see it all the time in like Marvel movies and things where it's like up in the sky, they'll be like, what's that? And then it's like zooms in and you see it's so fake and you can see it's fake every time.
There was a
it's
time
not
it
a real
felt
camera
like,
doing
I remember
it.
watching Firefly going, this looks cool.
It's like taken from the news or something. It's like when they'll show a news reel of like,
is that a bird?
What's that up in the sky? It really annoys me. Should we talk about character adaptations then and performances? Because I mean, it is a massive part of the film and a massive part of what fans of Star Trek are going to notice in this film. And Rob, you very tantalizingly said that there's 3 performances that were abysmal, and I'd like to hear.
Pine? Is Pine one of the 3?
Yes.
So my other one would be Simon Pegg.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've got a guess, Dave.
Maybe Zachary Quinto as Spock.
I would guess Bones.
Yes.
Wow.
Carl Urban I thought was awful. It's just doing an impression of DeForest Kelley. He's
is
trying really hard, but there was a couple where I was like, that's bad. How has that cut made the film?
I wrote down that he's doing an impersonation. More than the others, he's doing an impersonation.
I thought it was a really good impersonation.
It's funny because I just read a thing when I was doing my little finding the box office figures where he was saying that he wasn't doing it, and I was like, you are doing an impersonation, Mr. Urban, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about not so much the performances then, but maybe the characterization, because I think that's interesting. Again, we're on a different timeline, so it's, you have to take everything with a pinch of salt. But I want to talk about one which I thought is really bad, and that is Uhura. Her whole job in this film, apart from like one moment of overhearing a transmission and being kind of useful, is to just follow Spock around like a little lost puppy, looking sad and just going, are you okay?
She thirsts after Spock whilst Kirk thirsts after her. She says she's really good. Every other character in this film is good. A moment where they show you why they're really good, and Uhura's just like, I'm really good.
She gets to say, I speak 3 Romulan dialects. She's good at her job, but her role in this is just to follow him around, and he's like quite mean to her because he's in a bad mood, and also Vulcan, and it just seemed to me like a much worse kind of characterization of Uhura.
I thought Zoe Saldana did a good job.
I think she's a great actor, I think it just literally the characterization of Uhura is quite poor in this.
I can't really argue with that. I didn't feel it when I was watching it, and I can take your point. that she is used to augment the relationship between Spock and Kirk. She's like an accessory. I kind of get that. I kind of felt like, in terms of her and how good she was, the whole crew is just shown to be like, it's like a child has written this movie. It's just in terms of, and they've all just come out of Starfleet Academy, but they're all so good and so clever that they're immediately become all the captain.
They're on the flagship.
Oh, brilliant. And then she gets promoted, and then Scotty comes on, and then he gets promoted, and then Bones gets promoted, and Chekhov thinks of a way to do a thing, and he gets, I was like, what?
How old are you? I'm 17. I know how to do it. I can warp you up whilst you're falling down.
So does that mean he started in the academy when he was 14? What's going on?
It's just really talented.
That's such a good question.
Really talented. I did really the Lamine Yamal of the Enterprise.
I did really hate that Scotty arrives, no one knows who the hell he is, and he's suddenly chief engineer. Or it just seemed such nonsense. No one's questioning it. He's like, yeah, stick a uniform on, just go where you want. You're in charge. What happened to the Enterprise's engineer?
He was a level of abysmal above anything else in the film.
Yes.
Simon Pegg.
I quite enjoyed it.
I read in trivia about it. Apparently, he didn't even audition for it. JJ Abrams, obviously Simon Pegg's good friend, just sent him an email saying, "Do you want to be in Star Trek?" And Simon Pegg replied by saying, "I would do that for free. I would pay you to be in that film."
Oh, I hope he paid.
I'll tell you, Simon Pegg.
Wow.
I would pay more money for you to not have been in this film.
His Scottish accent is better than Doohan's.
I disagree. Thought he was just so bad in this.
Yeah, I think his accent's terrible, by the way.
And it's just one of those actors as well, as soon as you see his face in something, it just completely takes me out of it. It's like, oh, Simon Pegg's here.
And I don't think the characterization of Scotty's right either. It's a different Scotty. I know that's okay. It's a different timeline.
Well, I thought as a British man, I thought maybe Simon Pegg had given him a bit more kind of Scottish aggression. He's more of a comedy character. Simon Pegg's a comedian.
Yes,
it's just he's not good in this.
He could have told me.
I hate him in the Mission Impossible movies.
Wow, fair.
I agree. I don't like.
You guys are so miserable.
He's great in Hot Fuzz
and Shaun of the Dead.
Amazing. That's where he belongs.
I tell you, I did struggle a little bit. I feel like there's a smugness to the cast. And I don't think it's their fault, but just to the film in general and the characters, everyone knows what the story should be, and everyone's waiting for them all to have like little bro moments and stuff. And so there is like a weight of, he's about to do a thing. Like every time somebody does a thing, which is I didn't enjoy about Scotty. Oh, he's going to like be really Scottish and then solve some problems. And I didn't like Kirk particularly on that basis. Like if the first scene is, it didn't bother me the first time I watched the movie in particular, but driving a car really fast, deliberately crashing it, jumping through the air, nearly killing himself.
That was nonsense.
To like Beastie Boys and then saying his name.
Why did they have those scenes in? Take out the scenes of Kirk and Spock as children. Those should just be
I quite like fighty Spock child.
Yeah, I liked seeing Vulcan bully.
I couldn't decide whether I like that or not, but all of those pits were very similar to the pub quiz that Spock was doing in the film that we watched.
Correct.
Yeah, exactly. Which I did like, and I quite liked that we got to see a bit of normal 23rd century Earth.
I thought that too. I have written down specifically that I enjoyed seeing some bits of Star Trek I haven't seen before. The big shipbuilding, manufacturing plants in Iowa. I thought that was cool.
The fact it was Iowa, I thought was a good joke. Just the fact that it comes up as Iowa, there's people who are going to be like,
yeah,
I know where we are now.
Yes, for sure. And I did actually specifically write down Vulcan School. I quite liked it. I just quite liked seeing emotionless bullying. Trying to make people feel emotions. It's quite a funny idea. You're going to feel an emotion now, aren't you? Show me that you're feeling an emotion.
I quite like the red shirt dying only because as it was happening, I was like, they're doing the red shirt joke.
It felt like a wink for everybody. I mean, because he was so ridiculously awful.
Idiot.
Like, you want him to die. Hell yeah! Like, everybody wants him to die,
would you
and
not
he does
just
die.
Open your chute?
I don't know.
I'm going to really cut this close.
I mean, like, I don't like it. I didn't like it. I don't think it's good, but I get it, and I get it's like a joke for us all to be involved in.
I
which
think
is nice.
that when people, and fans do, by the way, dislike this film, quite as a sect of fans who really reject this whole, that the idea that Star Trek would take life that frivolously, that isn't very Star Trek, is it?
No, it's not.
That kind of
it's very contemporary this type of action movie, though, isn't it?
Yes, it
People
is.
dying and it's funny. Like the worst example and the most misjudged example, I think, is in Jurassic World, where that woman dies really excessively and badly. She like gets eaten by a pterodactyl and then thrown in a bit of water, and then the big mosasaurus comes and eats her and the pterodactyl all in one.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be funny.
I know.
But
Yeah,
it's just not.
it's a hard thing to enjoy. There was a Sherlock Holmes quote that was good, wasn't it?
Yes.
Little nod there.
Oh, I didn't get that bit. Where was that? What was the quote?
I can't
remember.
remember.
Well,
Oh,
Spock
yeah.
was saying, like, what, if you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains.
Oh, yes, yes.
However improbable must be the truth.
Yeah.
In terms of things I enjoyed, I'm going to keep going because this has been,
Can I just talk? Sorry, just because we're doing characters, I just wanted to say, speaking of Spock, I didn't really like his characterization either.
I didn't.
I accept that the part of the point of it is that he's going through this emotional trauma, but he just doesn't feel like Spock. Doesn't feel like young Spock to me.
I really enjoyed
At
it the
all.
first time I watched it, and I don't know what I was thinking. Like he's, and maybe again, it's just you can peer into the cultural mores of like this, like mid-internet age, but he's like sassy Spock.
Yeah.
Which of course means that he's emotional all the time. Like you said, there's this really underhand way. It's like live long and prosper.
Yeah, he's
It's like,
super emotional
what?
all the time. I don't understand that at all. Snogging Uhura on a transporter pad and in a lift.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that.
And I feel like Nimoy just comes in and absolutely wipes the floor with it.
He
was so good.
I thought he was
because
great.
he's emotionless.
Also, just on Spock exiling Kirk to a frozen death planet.
I thought
he's got a brig on the ship. Just stick him in the brig. Like,
Well, that was for reasons. So
yes, I know. Yes, there were reasons.
Nimoy's line where he says, "I am emotionally compromised."
Yes. Great
was
line.
Brilliant.
It was.
And the way he delivered it was brilliant. You could almost feel it coming through. This is a Spock that is older and wiser than any of the versions of Spock we've ever seen in Star Trek.
Yeah.
Who's obviously come to terms with the fact that there are times when he is going to feel emotions. And I thought that line was really brilliantly delivered.
I think there's an openness to Nimoy, whereas I always felt like Quinto's Spock is sort of mean. He's a sort of a prissy bully, and I guess you have to have conflict for reasons. I get it. And he's like, now he's a person who's programmed the Kobayashi Maru. But yeah, I didn't enjoy it.
You can really see the link, can't you, between this and Star Wars, like going forward.
God.
Like it feels like JJ Abrams has brought Star Wars to Star Trek in a way that I don't like. Like Scotty's little mate, very Star Wars. You know, the little guy with the eyes who's just small. I don't know what he does. Getting in! And he's just like, I don't know, he doesn't speak.
There was another scene where something happened and for some reason just lingered on that character, that little alien, who's just looking at the thing that was I can't even remember what it was.
Yeah.
But it lingered on him and he just went, or something like that. And why? Well, you just that's supposed to be funny.
Yeah.
Look, the alien's seen it happen.
Yeah. Also, Spock's ship. I just felt the design of Spock's ship is very like someone trying to do Star Wars, where like, we've got to do something different, or maybe it'll be like a sort of underwater sort of stingray kind of like bloop, 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 bloop,
Not
bloop.
to tread on Rob's most hated areas of discussion or type of discussion, but the idea that you would save an entire planet by sending one old Vulcan is insane.
I do think that
what is that?
I think the premise that kicks off this whole idea is just so weird. Like Spock's late to stop a supernova.
Yeah.
So a surviving miner.
We're all waiting on the planet for you to come and stop the supernova. Can they not evacuate the planet?
So a remaining miner travels through time and decides to destroy everything.
I was trying to get the temperature of the fan response to it, and there was one comment which kind of threw this in a positive light, which was I kind of like that the villain was just, oh, I'm real mad, and then it lets because the real progress arc of the movie is the crew coming together and solving their own conflicts.
Yeah.
So that's where the kind of drama happens.
I mean, I know we're getting into paradoxes and time travel's hard, but like if he thought about it, and we will talk about Nero momentarily, like he's gone back in time, perfect time to fix the problem. You know, just tell people, just tell Spock, say, Spock, in the future, you're going to be a bit late to stop this supernova.
If you could speed
get
up.
there sooner, and you'll save my planet, and everything will be fine. Thanks, mate.
Yeah.
See you later. But it's nonsense. And it's not. I didn't really think about it that much. I think it's okay. But if you do think about it, and Nero, I think we haven't talked about at all. I haven't thought about at all, and I think that tells you everything about him. He's a terrible.
Oh, I don't think he's terrible.
I think he's a terrible antagonist.
He's just
Can you describe him in any way?
He's the latest in a long line of terrible antagonists.
I quite like the
Star Trek.
idea that the thing I don't like about him is more, again, like sort of slightly whether it's believable or not. It's they've been around for 25 years. I don't really understand what they were doing in the Klingon. Were they in prison in Klingon? I don't really understand that. I don't know why their mining ship has got so many weapons. That's weird. Why do they have like
for mining
special torpedoes? But I quite like that they're dedicated to this and they've been waiting for years and years and they're super mad about it. That I enjoyed. But
yeah, I didn't. I just felt like, and I just think him personally, like, first of all, I couldn't believe it was Eric Bana.
Yeah.
That was a surprise.
So anti-PD in this film,
I
isn't it?
didn't understand why the Romulans look different again. This is like the fourth iteration of Romulans
Maybe
we've
they're
seen.
just minors.
I just didn't get it. And I just thought that he's just a nothing. He's not very evil. I know he's destroying literal planets, but I don't get that from him. He's just quite dull. It's just nothing. I just did nothing for me. It was more like this ship is drilling. You know, the ship felt like the bad guy, and the plan. I got the plan. Like they're
The ship
destroying.
is so big,
but the man,
so big.
The man himself just didn't. It just, and the idea of like Kirk and Spock facing off with Nero just leaves me completely cold.
Rob's synopsis was correct. It just kind of it does work.
It just sort of ends.
That's fine because the conflict is getting them two together. I didn't really enjoy when they were together. I won't talk about my favorite scene. I did, but the bit at the end where they're like whispering and they're going, "Oh, should we do cock and Spock?"
Spurk.
Yeah, cock and Spock. Yeah, should we do like Kirk and Spock? Just business, and they do a little bit of that.
Changing the subject, I was quite surprised to see Winona Ryder as Spock's mum.
Pre-Stranger Things.
I started thinking about where she was in her career at this point, and I guess she'd been away for quite a long time and then got this kind of weird role. She kind of looks the part, but what I can remember of Amanda in the earlier movies. Amanda.
Starring as Amanda.
It just made me, it's not a good sign, I suppose. You never want to see someone in a film and just start thinking about that rather than thinking about what they're doing in the film at that time.
It kind of threw me out. It was
just kind of funny. I was like, it's been
it threw me out of it a little bit. But yeah, it was because it's funny because she's back now. She's so back.
Yeah.
And then she was not back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's the bit, isn't there, where just before she dies, she does the thing that all characters in films do when you know they're about to die. She just turns and looks. And it's the moment of eye contact.
Shall I move?
It's like, do you know you're about to die?
Yeah.
Winona Ryder, because you've done the I'm about to die look.
Yeah.
And just before they're all beamed off, the bit of the plateau that she's standing on collapses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's bad
For reasons.
It's bad for her, for reasons.
For reasons.
Should we talk about standout things?
Yeah.
This should be good. Let's start with standout character or performance then, and I'm going to obviously come to Rob first because he's told me about the ones he's hated, and that might be one of the standout performances. Rob, what was a standout character or performance for you?
Well, I thought the best performance was Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah.
It's quite a boring answer.
Yeah.
If I had to pick
Wow.
who did I think was best out of the recast three, I think Zachary Quinto
You thought he was best?
was the best out of Karl Urban, Chris Pine, and Zachary Quinto. I would go Zachary Quinto.
I'd put him in third place out of those three.
Wow.
How about you, Nath?
I would also have said Leonard Nimoy.
Yes, that's the
Because
secret
we're
right
being-
answer.
We're
But
being little babies.
but if you couldn't have Leonard,
I would have. I don't know the actor's name, which is terrible. Captain Pike.
Yes.
is the best thing in the film.
yes, he was good. I can't remember either what his name is. He's in stuff, and
Yeah,
it was good.
He's in this.
I actually thought Karl Urban was great. I thought,
fair.
and in his impersonation,
He's fun.
This
This is the problem. The film is fun.
and I thought that it was the best reimagining of that character, or maybe it's not a reimagining. I thought that they nailed Bones in a way that they didn't nail Spock and Kirk.
I've
quite,
accidentally
and I thought he did it.
Walked us right round to, there was a very famous Onion headline at this time, which is that Star Trek fans complain new film is fun, watchable. And I literally just did. I think that is part
Yeah.
of my problem, is that they're having fun.
Yes,
But then the original cast were having fun and being parodies of themselves by the end. But this is a parody of a parody.
It's hard. It's hard because what we're talking about is that two different things. What it is as a film, what it is as a Star Trek film.
I know I'm interrupting the questions that we put at the end of our discussing of the film, but that it does remind me that what I wanted to say, or one of the thoughts I had, was that this is the first time that this isn't a series of films based on a TV show. This is different, and there's always that relationship with TV, not just in the way that they're made, but in the original films are trying to capture or continue something that people loved that was on television. And then with The Next Generation, the massive problem for me with those films is it's way too close to them having been on TV. There's still loads of Star Trek on TV, and it's very difficult to escape the orbit of all of that. And this is the first time these actors have never appeared on TV as these characters, and it's a remake, definitely not of, well, it's of the cultural myth that is Star Trek. It's not anything to do with necessarily the films or the TV specifically, and it does makes it completely detached from them in a way. And then I think that they deliberately, everything that I spoke about and we've spoken about in terms of how it looks and the style of it, serves to maintain that difference.
Like I said, I think it's clever in a way. It's like starting a movie with a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Like that's supposed to suspend your disbelief, and maybe it's not very clear right at the start, but they do explain to you in the movie, none of this is what you've seen before. Like it's all new stuff, and that's clever.
And it means you can't be mad.
And so it means you can't be mad, exactly, because this is all different. So stop comparing it to the past, because this is about the future, baby.
Can I tell you one little bit more of trivia before we move on?
Yes. Yeah.
And that's that JJ Abrams had a discussion with George Lucas whilst making this film.
Okay.
And JJ Abrams asked him, how would you make Star Trek better? And George Lucas said,
God,
put lightsabers in it.
That's a good line. I mean, I assume he was making a joke and he winked and he
Who
walked
knows?
away.
Who knows if that's the truth?
Well, if he's making a joke, then I think it's great. If he's serious, then I don't know.
I think he's more likely to be being serious. Knowing George Lucas.
Well, Jar Jar's the key to all this.
Yeah, I know. We need to do Standout scene as well. And I will tell you, I found this very difficult because it's just a big jumble of fast-moving scenes all the time, vying for your attention.
Did you like the scene where Kirk was chased by one animal and then there was a bigger animal?
Oh my
God.
God.
And then he was chased by that animal instead.
It's like
None of that
JJ
needs to be
Abrams
in there.
has watched Star Wars again.
He's come down on the planet. Just immediately have him land in the cave where Spock is.
Well, I did think, like,
For reasons.
you know, I think it's awful that Spock exiles Kirk. That feels bad, but he's done it on a planet where there's a Federation outpost. So you would think that the escape pod would go to the outpost, and it's like,
It's quite
over
close.
here.
Given it's a whole planet.
It's 14 kilometers.
Yeah.
It just seems mad. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, what I'm saying is, yes, you don't need those creatures. They could have just landed it there, and Nimoy's
That's
there.
true. The conversation with Spock is, it's an Arctic planet, Mr. Spock. Are we sure that we should not send him anywhere closer? It'd be fine. And are there any dangerous animals on the
There's
planet?
always
Right,
something that has to happen in every scene. Would it be good if... how do we get Kirk from where he lands to where he meets future Spock, though? Maybe there's like 2 animals.
The most ridiculous thing is the ship is blowing up while Kirk is being born. That's the most ridiculous. Like, just shut up. So that's not my favourite scene. Although that bit was actually the bit I was going to say with that the sequence at the beginning. It felt really different. All of the audio, all of the kind of the dialogue and the conversation happening on the bridge of the Kelvin is much more rushed and warlike. It seems more like a war movie than I've ever seen on Star Trek before. The insides of it, the fans always say it looks like a brewery, but it looks kind of industrial, and it just has a different sense of what the future is going to look like that isn't just sort of gleaming and clean. And it was incredibly frantic, and I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I quite like it as a cold open. Just stuff is happening. Oh, wow, this is... Man, just buckle up, you know.
Hemsworth's good, isn't he? Not his accent
I think,
necessarily.
he
but
was good.
Some of the
he
other
was good.
things he was-
How about you, Rob? Standout scene?
Probably the scene, again, where Leonard Nimoy speaks to Kirk.
Yes,
That was my favourite bit of the film, was when
same.
Leonard Nimoy was in it.
Yeah, well, he's great.
Intro line was great. And again, like having just watched all of the films, that landed way better for me. Just, he said, "Who are you?" And he said, "I am and always have been."
Yeah, and just because you've mentioned it, I feel like just going back, I didn't dislike Chris Pine as Kirk. I didn't like Kirk, young Kirk, early in the film Kirk, as in fighting and groping Uhura and all that kind of stuff. But I thought from there, I thought it's a good performance and believable to me as Kirk. But anyway, we're talking about standout scenes, and my standout scene, like I said, I really struggled. I can't think of anything.
Really?
Certainly not that anyone said. The only thing I had was I thought that the
mining scene, that was cool.
I'm about to tell you my scene. Why are you chucking scenes in? I thought that the destruction of Vulcan looked cool. Being sucked in, just literally that bit.
So the mining scene?
No, not the mining scene.
Like
the mining has
said.
been done. It's literally the wide shot of seeing the planet crumbling in on itself. I thought that looked very good, and that was cool.
Seeing
bit.
it from Nimoy's perspective as
That's
well.
also
on the
good.
planet
That was good.
Great.
That was good. Yeah, I agree. That
Nimoy.
was. And that's probably Nimoy, and that's properly that is a horrible bit of revenge as well.
He's done
Positioning
well,
him on a planet where he can see his planet being destroyed and just having to deal with it.
I just wouldn't look.
You'd have
But
to
I'd
look.
want him to know I wasn't
though.
looking.
You would, wouldn't you? You wouldn't be able to help yourself. I don't think.
The thing about Kirk, I just wanted to agree. It was the last thing I've got written down from my notes, having watched the film. About you saying you didn't enjoy him earlier on. I didn't really enjoy him at all. I didn't really feel like there was much of a characterization, really. And I think that the thing that Abrams does or did with this and then with Star Wars is treat the original as some kind of myth, and he's not the movie in no sense. This is what we're talking about, the ridiculous promotion and kind of fast track career, and it's okay because the filmmakers know that we want to get to that point. Spock wants to get to that point. We're not really dealing with people or a story. We're like dealing with this established world, and we want to get Kirk back there as soon as possible. We're dealing with like, Kirk is this thing. We know that, and just get him there as fast as you can. And it has this sense of like manifest destiny to it, which I just didn't really enjoy. Yeah,
exactly that. Like I said, it's the sense that they were always just going to be who they always were, despite everything else the movie tries to do. It kind of makes it just everything feel very flat. Really, it's just like, oh yeah, it's just who he is.
I almost enjoyed the sense of really knowing that all of the main characters from the crew were just really, really good.
Yeah.
Just like the best. They're the best at what they do. Because I never really got that sense from the original movies. They're just the people that happened to be there at the time. Chekhov, I've never really seen him do anything. They all have their moments through the movies.
Yeah.
But every single one of those members of the original crew that were depicted in this movie were the best of the best at what they do. And Chekhov was the standout for me. I thought he was a hero.
I did like the computer recognition gag on how he pronounces V's. I thought if you're going to have a callback,
that was the only bit that made me laugh.
It was pretty good.
I thought I don't think I actually laughed out loud, but inside I was like, that's funny.
Yeah, it's slightly too pleased with itself, isn't it?
It is a little bit. Can we talk about the critical reception to the film?
Yeah, we can. The critics loved it.
Yeah, I thought they would.
And again, I think maybe that sometimes. I've said this before, I think, or maybe on this podcast, but when you listen to an album for the first time and you really like it, often you tire of that album quite quickly. And I think there is a sense that, this works, but it's quite disposable. Anyway, it was released in May 2009. Already said that the top three at the box office that year were Avatar, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, and Ice Age, I think, Dawn of the Dinosaurs, I think. $150 million budget. So the budgets are in a different league now. 385 million worldwide. I should translate that into 2024 money, and then we could rank it. I'll do that right at the end when we've seen them all to see if that is better than the motion picture. It'll be close, I think. Critics loved it. Manola Dargis from the NYT, the review was called "A Franchise Goes Boldly Backwards," which I thought was going to be snarky, but it wasn't. It was saying this is the right thing to do. And the review it's a good review. A bright, shining blast from a newly imagined past. Star Trek isn't just a pleasurable rethink of your geek uncle's favourite TV show. It's also a testament to television's power as a myth maker. I guess when it's just like, when you get something back that's, again, that sense of myth is what I was kind of talking about. Peter Bradshaw in The Guardian, normally much more cynical. The story of Kirk and Spock is brought thrillingly back to life by a new first generation.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. It's a blockbuster.
Yeah.
It's like in a way the others weren't. You know, it's glitzy and it's exciting, and it's you can just imagine people eating popcorn with a big grin on their face, and then going away and just being happy. And you know, what we've done is watch it again, and also as part of this timeline of films.
We're putting it in the Star Trek lineage, not in the what's happening.
You can imagine them laughing as well, can't you, with their popcorn?
They'll be laughing.
When Simon Pegg comes on.
They'll
when he's going through the tubes. Oh, look at him go up that one now.
Yeah.
And when the alien sits on the thing.
And they'll go, ooh.
Look at the alien.
When they see an explosion, they'll go, ooh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You guys do seem like bitter Trek nerds.
I'm not. I'm just joining in with Rob. Like I said, I enjoyed it. It's just not a Star Trek movie.
I hate that kind of snap. I think movies should take themselves more seriously than they do. Yeah. And this kind of thing has just seeped into so much popular blockbuster.
But there's a place for
We've
these.
praised it sometimes.
Now.
It depends on how it's done.
It feels, cinema has changed a lot because of recently because of COVID, like going to the cinema, I mean. And, there was definitely, and I'm sure there still is, just a place for movies that you just go to the cinema with popcorn and a smile and you enjoy it and then you go and you don't think about it again. And I feel this is just one of those movies, like it's fulfilling a role.
And I think that's exactly why the reviews are popular. They're from people who are just watching everything. So from a mainstream point of view, I think these are enjoyable films. And I think that's why the increasing weight of fan opinion on these is quite negative. Some people are like, hey, we're getting Trek, I'm not complaining, but a lot of people are negative. And why I think for us on the tracks that we've been on are more like impatient with it than we might be.
Yeah. Should we talk about Rob's recommendations? This will be good. So from
here's
a film
some big pieces of shit that you can
from a film I hated, here's some things you might watch.
Well, the whole tone of it reminded me of, if you want to watch another film with a smarmy character in the lead played by an actor called Chris, watch Guardians of the Galaxy, one of my most hated films of all time.
Wow. He auditioned for Kirk.
I bet he did. I can see it now. Just laughing and eating his apples and punching people and having a little one-liner afterwards.
I really didn't like the Kobayashi Maru scene, by the way.
No, I didn't.
But carry on with your recommendations. Guardians of the Galaxy.
I am aware I'm in the very small minority of people who don't like Guardians of the Galaxy, but I just find the tone of it utterly
I think give it another 5 years.
Intolerable.
We'll go back and watch that, and I will think exactly the same.
I would love to watch it again. I've never actually finished Guardians of the Galaxy.
Right.
I've tried to watch it 3 times.
Why?
Because everyone's like, you told me that I was like a joyless husk when I first told you I didn't like Guardians of the Galaxy.
Sound like something I would say.
Yeah, but also I think it might be right, don't you think?
I think at the time
we just watched another film which is just meant to make you feel joy, really. And
when I first watched this film, I liked it.
Yeah.
Guardians of the Galaxy, I hate it.
Fair.
But
so that's your recommendation.
It's snappy and it's got a crew of, big, larger-than-life characters going and saving the world in a colourful sci-fi, and it's got good soundtrack.
I think it's a great recommendation to be like. If you liked Star Trek, then you'll like Guardians of the Galaxy.
Also, I kind of liked the whole. I do enjoy the black hole wormhole time travel thing.
Yeah.
And I'll go back to a movie I've spoken about very briefly previously, and that's Interstellar. I think that's the best example of a movie that I can think of that does the black hole wormhole, what's through an event horizon thing really, really well in an intriguing way. And that collision between, it's time travel, but not really time travel.
Yeah.
And at the end of the movie, when Matthew McConaughey, finally comes home, and I won't spoil what then happens for anyone who's not seen Interstellar, but it's an incredibly moving scene, I think. But just visually, like what happens when you go through a black hole, like no one's really imagined that before. No one can ever imagine it. No one can ever say. And I did quite like at the end them trying to escape from the black hole.
Yeah.
And they were going at warp speed, but they were still unable to escape the gravitational pull of the black hole.
It's like us watching this film. We were travelling at warp 5.
Although I did wonder how you can keep travelling at warp speed when you eject the warp core. But it's probably fine. Don't worry about it. Fair enough. I think those are two good recommendations. I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy is definitely very much like this movie, and may have had some inspiration from this movie. I don't know. It's like, but it's absolutely works. Just weirdly, I really like Guardians of the Galaxy. I really hate Guardians of the Galaxy 2.
I've not even seen
even
that.
though that I would say it's almost exactly the same film in terms of the tone.
They go
the
to a
bits and
planet and
pieces.
nothing happens.
The whole it's based. It's the same jokes, the same crew, the same good-looking CG and whatever, and I just don't like it at all.
Maybe the last 15 years of cinema has been awful.
What have we all
Zoe
been doing?
Saldana's in Guardians of the Galaxy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to see another good Zoe Saldana movie.
Yeah. She's green in that. And her roommate.
Oh yeah, I remember
was
the green. Oh, that was bad, wasn't it? The green roommate in this one.
Was it bad?
What was bad
She's
about
just
it?
Green.
Just the fact that that's the extent of your imagination when thinking, well, what could this alien race be like? Like a human but green.
Well, what about that a human but with big eyes?
Yeah, and that
At
as
the
well.
beginning, I was. Yeah,
What
I
about
thought you
human
would
but
enjoy
with pointy ears? And
You shut
different-
your mouth. That's fine.
There's eyebrows as well.
Well, thanks for those recommendations, Rob. And this is going to be extremely illuminating. It's time for me to ask you about your warp score. We're traveling along at 5. This is got a little bump after Star Trek Nemesis. You've really not enjoyed JJ Abrams' Star Trek.
But the special effects.
but
The smiling cast.
what warp speed are you traveling at now?
The way I interpret the warp score is it is not a reflection of how much I enjoyed the film I've just watched,
Yeah.
but how quickly I'm traveling towards Star Trek fandom.
Interesting.
And we're at warp 7.
Whoa,
I
that's
like that
illuminating.
interpretation.
I mean, that is the correct interpretation, and that's illuminating. That's going to be very interesting later on, but not yet. Well, we should talk about what's next. Nath, do you know? Did they always intend to make another movie, or was it kind of did the success of this one?
Well, Dave, no, they did, and I think that's got as much to do with the time that they're making it in, as we saw in the last episode, where we're tracking all of the years through from 2002 to 2009. And even though we think of the 80s as a time when franchise filmmaking and sequels really came to the fore, it's so that the top 5s are basically all sequels and tentpoles in this period of time. So the studio was intending to bring back Star Trek to be that. That's why they gave it the platform that they gave it, and they got the filmmakers to make it that they did. You think about in the past, we talk about Patrick Stewart saying, we should get like a top line action director to direct it, and of course no one wants to do it, and you can't get A-list talent in there because you've got the talent that you put on a cheap TV show. So now it's completely different, and they signed everyone to a 2-movie deal up front, so they all were contractually obliged to come back, so they all plan to come back. But Abrams and his team were very busy and very popular. So Abrams, and this ties into what comes next, Abrams, in the middle of the 2 Star Trek movies that he makes during this period, or directs during this period, made a movie called Super 8.
Yeah.
Remember Super 8?
I liked that film.
I like Super 8.
Yeah, I kind of feel like I would go back with a different pair of eyes, and that's kind of additional watching for the next week if anybody would like to watch Super 8. And he was seen, you remember the conversation at the time, very much as the heir to the blockbuster legacy, very specifically of Spielberg and Lucas.
Yeah.
We spoke a little bit about in those very early Star Trek films about how that fairy tale optimistic version of science fiction and that worldview of from suburban America, as seen from suburban America, was their particular contribution, and it faded. There was always things which kind of were under the surface. You have a Blade Runner or The Thing, but that was the predominant mode, and Star Trek was always kind of in opposition to that, or running alongside it, or slightly more old school. And so I think one of the things we've been kind of talking about in this podcast is Abrams isn't a brilliant fit for that. He's really from this other school of stuff.
Yeah.
And he's making Star Trek. But anyway, he was busy, so it took 3 years to write the script and to get it going, even though everyone was kind of waiting to do it. And I think, again, that shows that there used to be people who were basically all they did was make Star Trek movies, and that isn't this current crew. They're A-listers or burgeoning A-listers and a very in-demand producer-director. But they start filming it in January 2012, and it's released in May 2013. So that's quite quick for this period of time. It is a constant, they're back on it as soon as they can. And to solidify what I was talking about with Abrams, he was announced as the director of Star Wars, the new Star Wars, in January of the year so before the next film even comes out, he's announced as being the director of the new Star Wars, which weirdly casts a massive shadow on his participation in future Star Trek movies. And he's been at Paramount for a long time because he made, as we said last week, Mission Impossible 3, then he went to Star Trek. And so this is moving him out of that as well because that's over at Disney now. So it's kind of a realignment in a kind of a logical, natural way. But what it says about Star Trek is probably only reaffirms the things that the fans have been saying since and we've been saying in this podcast. Anyway, 2010, a little brief overview. Guesses. Rob, what's in the top 5 in 2010?
Oh, God. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1?
That is correct. That is at number 3. Dave, can you beat number 3?
Iron Man.
You just say Iron Man every time.
It could be Iron Man 2.
When was Iron Man?
Iron Man
2008. Iron Man 1.
God's sake.
What about the first Iron Man? Yeah, Iron Man 2 was this year. I think it came 7 or 8.
Is the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies kicked off yet?
Not yet. I don't think. I'm looking at my list of things on the side. No, not yet. Toy Story 3 was number 1. Alice in Wonderland was number 2. It's the first year.
The Tim Burton one.
Yes. That to me is just like the gentrification of Burton. Do you know what I mean? Like you get this guy who's
the gentrification of Burton. Yes,
genuinely weird guy who has an aesthetic which at the beginning people are like, I really genuinely not sure we want to give this guy a movie because he's quite strange. He makes Pee Wee Herman. Then it's like, oh, but you put that in Batman. Oh, it's amazing. It's Batman. And this is really like the awful end of it. You can make $1 billion movie with that guy if you let him have Alice in Wonderland. I really hate that film. It makes me feel sick.
I've never seen it. I think I stopped watching Tim Burton movies after Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Yeah, it's like that, but there's a cat in it and... Yeah, it's
I went to the
Johnny
cinema
Depp with a hat.
He's always got a hat.
I went to the cinema with a lady to see it, and halfway through she said, "Can we leave? I feel sick."
Whoever that was, she was right. Inception was number 4.
Oh my God! I forgot Inception was this year.
One of my favourite movies of this whole period of time. And Shrek Forever After was number 5. Sci-fi during this period is back. I don't know really why. I feel like I've got loads of opinions about the 70s and 80s and 90s, but way fewer about this period of time because I think it's more recent. But just in writing these down, The Book of Eli was this year. Daybreakers, which was Ethan Hawke.
Yeah.
Iron Man 2. Monsters. You know, I think because special effects and this was the guy. I think it's the guy who goes on to make Rogue One,
right?
And he'd made a movie about these giant kind of kaiju-ish monsters, and you barely see them. It's all about the people. Never Let Me Go. Predators was this year, again just trying to kickstart a franchise. Really, Tron Legacy, same thing from Disney. 2011 guesses. Dave, go first.
2011. Is it The Hobbit yet?
Not yet. Not yet. These are all the top 5, and in fact, maybe the top 10 are franchise movies.
It turns out I can only remember things if I remember where I am at that time. And I just met you guys in 2011, and I'm trying to think any movies like so. I saw loads of movies at this time, but nothing's coming to mind.
Deathly Hallows Part 2.
Yes, that's number 1. Why didn't you just go with that?
I wanted to say something original. We know that
there are no original movies this year. There's Transformers Dark of the Moon.
No.
There's Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides. There's Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 1.
God.
And there's Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. That's the top 5. This is to see what I mean. We're really into franchise times. Sci-fi movies this year: The Adjustment Bureau, Attack the Block, which I'm still a big fan of.
Yeah.
Captain America's out this year. Super 8 is out this year. Cowboys and Aliens, starring Han Solo and James Bond.
Yeah.
Strangely bad film. Green Lantern, In Time, Paul,
Simon Pegg.
Real Steel. I actually rewatched Paul a year or two ago, and I enjoyed it way more than I did the first time.
But it's still bad.
I actually quite enjoyed it.
Okay.
Because I'm more familiar with the SNL alums in it, and
Right.
I feel like their combination of that with the British humour I enjoyed from Pegg and Frost. It kind of worked.
Okay.
Anyway, Source Code, Real Steel, The Thing, Thor, X-Men First Class. So there's loads of genre filmmaking going on at this period of time. 2012, you get another go.
It's The Hobbit.
The Hobbit and Unexpected Journey is at number 4. Yes, correct. But 2012, there's another film.
The Amazing Spider-Man.
The Amazing Spider-Man is this year. I think it was number 8 or 9.
The Avengers?
The Avengers is number
Oh,
1.
man.
Yes.
Wow.
That's
So
right.
Disney had bought Marvel in 2009 and they'd waited for all of the distribution deals to lapse, and Disney distributed this one. Obviously, I think probably waited for Avengers because it's them all coming together and it's going to be massive. So that's the first Disney Marvel movie. Kinda. Skyfall is number 2. Dark Knight Rises is number 3.
Oh, yeah.
The Hobbit number 4, and another Ice Age movie. I had no idea there were this
Wow.
many. Continental Drift is this year. Also going on in science fiction, The Amazing Spider-Man. Hunger Games comes out this year for the first time. Men in Black 3, Battleship, which was rubbish. Chronicle, which got that guy the Fantastic Four movie a few years later, which was awful.
Yeah.
Cloud Atlas was very strange.
I've still not seen it. I've always wanted to see it.
I kind of like it.
I can't remember what I thought of it.
That's
Great
Okay.
trailer,
Perfect.
though.
Yeah, yeah, good trailer.
Dread, John Carter of Mars,
Ugh.
Looper, which I still maintain is good, although
I
Ryan
don't.
Johnson, I have opinions about his later work, obviously. Prometheus is
Yeah.
this year, and Total Recall. So they're really, they're looking back through the old drawers there, digging out everything they
Yeah.
can.
I should watch Looper again. I didn't like it at
Is
the
that
time.
the Bruce Willis,
Yes.
Gordon Levitt movie?
Yes.
Yeah.
I've seen that again. I can't remember whether I liked it or not.
I did like it. 2013.
Ex Machina is a movie.
Is it out this year?
I think so.
I didn't write it down.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a bit later. Top 5, anyone?
And maybe it's 2014 anyway.
There's
sorry.
an original movie, number 1 this year.
Oh, an original movie.
I'm sure Rob's seen it lots of times. Maybe not because he wanted to.
But because his daughter did. What does your daughter watch?
She might be a bit young for it, to be fair.
I don't know. I have no idea.
Frozen. Was the
Frozen.
number 1.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, of course.
Iron Man 3.
Yeah.
I could have given you an Iron Man guess.
Yeah.
Despicable Me 2, The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug, and The Hunger Games, Catching Fire.
We went to the cinema together, Rob, to watch The Desolation of Smaug. And
I left earlier
you
than you
left
did. Yeah.
halfway through.
Yeah,
Yeah.
before the film had finished, specifically.
Happy
Yeah.
memories.
Yes.
Also, 2013, Gravity.
Yeah.
Man of
I like
Steel.
Gravity. That was
Gravity
good.
was great.
Man of Steel with
Not a sci-fi movie, though.
Henry Cavill.
Gravity,
Yeah. Friend
my
of the
opinion.
podcast, Henry Cavill. No, you're probably right. It's probably
It's
not.
a drama set
Yeah.
in space.
Yes.
Sounds like you're trying to be controversial there. Anyone want to fight me on that? Anyone want a little fight?
Thor: The Dark World, After Earth, Elysium, which was a disappointment, Ender's Game, Her, The Host, Oblivion, Pacific Rim, Riddick is back, Snowpiercer, The Wolverine, and World War Z.
I like Pacific Rim.
I like Pacific Rim a lot. Yeah, I did. It's a shame it's the movie that Guillermo del Toro made instead of The Hobbit in the end, but
Yeah.
apart from that. So yeah, tons going on. And I ran out of time. So what was going on in 2013? We will just have to remember.
2014 or 2013?
2013, like the events of the year. That is the movie that the next film, called Star Trek Into Darkness, comes out. So I'll just Google now events in 2013. See if you can remember any. Come
Andy
on.
Murray won Wimbledon for the first time.
Oh, that's pretty good. HMV goes into administration.
Wow.
Horse meat found in supermarket meats.
Oh, God, I remember that.
Oh, Oscar Pistorius kills his girlfriend Reva Steenkamp.
The Last of Us is released.
True.
Margaret Thatcher died.
Oh.
There we go. Do you know one of the things that I was, we've shifted on from doing these contexts a little bit differently to how we were doing at the beginning. And I wish I'd kept up with like what video game systems were out, because I feel like that's a real marker of where I am and what, and you know,
Yeah.
so Star Trek Into Darkness, it's PS3.
Well, 2013 is PS4 was released in November 2013.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. This is we're moving from PS3 to PS4.
The Last of Us is released and GTA 5 is released.
Yeah.
that year as well. Which are, GTA 5 obviously Titan.
We're moving into an era which we were actually working and being friends with each other in.
Yes.
And I remember all of these things, and it's a different. It's not like excavating my childhood anymore.
No.
It's realizing that I've been wrong about things for 10 years. We're in a different place.
It's coming much more into sharp relief.
It is.
Okay, well, we're in 2013. We are all
I feel
caught
so
up.
young.
I know. I can actually remember things. And we're basically ready for our next Star Trek movie. It is called Star Trek Into Darkness.
They're doing fancy names now.
Yes, that is a fancy
There's no colon.
name.
It's like, where are we trekking?
Into darkness. I'm excited to watch it, and I'm excited for you to see it too, Rob. I'm glad you haven't seen this one. I think there's some interesting stuff in it, and it will be great to get your opinion on it. That's next time, Star Trek Into Darkness. Make sure you watch it before you listen to the next episode, unless you don't mind suffering all the spoilers. But there's one last thing we have to do this week, and I'm excited to ask the question this time.
There were vibes this week.
There were vibes. Rob, are you a Star Trek fan?
To my dismay, I am a Star Trek fan.
I thought this might happen.
We did it.
I was honestly gripping the arms on this chair.
We did it, and it makes so much sense.
It does.
Not enjoying that movie
I thought
makes you a Star Trek fan.
Yeah, I thought you might really like these.
I'm annoyed at myself. I'm annoyed at listening to myself in this episode, and it was the difference between how I remember enjoying this film in 2009 and how I felt how I felt about it having watched it yesterday that made me realise only a Star Trek fan would be annoyed by this.
Yeah.
Oh, and it's
true.
so funny that I've just spent like a couple of hours reading those Reddit threads, and they are so similar to the reasons that you were annoyed. Legitimate reasons.
Well,
Legitimate
can
reasons.
JJ Abrams do anything to stop Rob from being a Star Trek fan? He's got 2 films to try. So that's very exciting. A reason to keep listening for sure. You've been listening to Red Shirt Cinema Club. If you've enjoyed listening, rating and reviewing the podcast would really help us out. We'll be back next Monday with another episode, and in the meantime, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email to redshirtcinemaclub@gmail.com, where a team of highly trained tribbles await your correspondence. See you next week.